You are listening to the Oracle of Light podcast. I am your host, Shauna DeMellon, and I am so very excited for my conversation today. I have the beautiful Narelle Hudson with me. She is a grief counselor and has such an incredible story. I feel like we're all honored to have her here in this space with us to help us understand grief and loss, and most importantly, love after loss. So I'm so excited that you're here. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Shauna. Lovely to be here with you.
I'm so glad you're here. Now, would you give everyone, share your story, how things came to be? There were some significant losses in your world, and so I would be honored if you would share your story with us.
It's been a big story. Yes. How much of it do you want me to share? I'm a bit of an open book. I'm a writer, so yeah, I share my story freely. But yeah, it's a big one.
I love that. I would love it. We would love to hear all of it. Everything that you would love to share, I think would be so beautiful and so uplifting and heartwarming for our listeners to hear.
Yeah, so there will probably be tears as well. I'm still very heavily in the grief process.
Yeah.
After my recent loss. So I guess I've always been, or I don't guess, I know I've always been on a spiritual journey since I was young. I think it probably came to a head when I was just graduating uni and I experienced a near-death car accident. That kind of, I don't know, it changed me in so many ways, as a near-death experience does. It wasn't my experience to live, though. I was in the car accident and then I was in a coma for 10 days, and my mum's the one that shares the story of my near-death experience. She was in the room with me, and yeah, the whole room just went really cold and she had goosebumps all over her arms, and she heard my voice coming from me, but coming from like above me, not in my body, saying, "Mom, I think I'm dead."
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I can't imagine what that would have been like for her, but she's always been so spiritual and has such a strong faith. And she just said, if you need her more than me, God, you take her, which makes me emotional. And then she said, I came back into my body and yeah, it was obviously meant to stay. And so I believe I was meant to stay so I could meet my beautiful husband.
Yeah. And
so
what is his name?
Bret.
Yeah,
so I have always done things pretty fast in my life, so I recovered super quickly, way too quickly according to my neuropsychologist. And I had the accident in November and then had just graduated from uni and had been offered a full-time job in my first career as a teacher. So I took the job, but first year of uni, the room was still spinning, like I still had brain damage and things like that. And yeah, it was very full on. But I was obviously meant to meet Bret that year because it was his first year at this new school, his second year of teaching, because he'd trained later in life. He was a bit older than me. He'd had his first career as a professional gymnast.
wow.
Yeah, so I met him. He was in his second year of teaching, and yeah, I don't know, when you know,
I was just gonna say, when you
I'd found my soulmate.
Did you really, like, you just knew, you were like, here we go.
Yeah, like he had a lot going on in his life at the time. He had been divorced recently and had to leave his children and everything. So he had a lot going on, and he tried to warn me off him because he had so much going on. But yeah, when you know, you know.
I love that. So you met Bret.
Yeah.
And then how soon after you met did you get married? How quickly was that?
Yeah, so we were together for quite a few years. I think it might have been like 3 or 4 years before we got married. Um, yeah, he'd, as I said, come out of a marriage, so he was, yeah, just wanted to be sure
Yeah.
before he did it again. He didn't think he ever probably would get married again.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we took our time, and then as soon as we got married, or actually just before we got married, we had to have serious conversations about children because I really wanted to have children, and Bret had already had three, and he'd had a vasectomy after his third child. So that was a big conversation we had to have. It was kind of a deal breaker for me. I
Oh.
just saw myself as a mother. And if he wasn't willing to do that with me, then yeah, it would have really questioned things, even though he was the one.
Oh.
So yeah, but he was willing to go down that road with me. But yeah, that was a long, horrible, bumpy road.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that road consisted of 5 rounds of IVF.
5. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, they were all unsuccessful rounds because, yeah, without, I guess, blaming anyone, but yeah, the clinic made some mistakes, and let's just say the eggs didn't go in my uterus the first 4 rounds.
What? Oh my gosh. Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, didn't know at the time, and they didn't know at the time. So they just, I guess, kept wondering why I wasn't pregnant, because they were like, well, you're young and you're thin and you're fertile, and, you should be able to get pregnant really easily. Like, we don't know what's going wrong here.
Yeah.
And then they did some more invasive surgery afterwards, and discovered that the eggs hadn't been put in the right spot, because I have a bicorner uterus. So I have like a double uterus. I have two.
What? Oh my
Ultimately.
goodness.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's a distinct
Okay.
wall down the middle. So they weren't putting them in the right spot.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So then
Yeah.
you find this out, and then
Yeah.
the next
And the
number
next time
5.
was successful because they put the eggs in under surgery
Okay.
to
Oh,
put them in the right spot.
yes. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I've never
And
heard
then
that
we got
before. So
pregnant.
thank you. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But then, and, I just assumed we'd already been to hell and back over all the rounds of IVF. Anyone who's been through it knows what an emotional roller coaster that is.
Yes, absolutely.
And yeah, and so then we got pregnant, and I just assumed once I was pregnant, nothing could go wrong because I'd already been through everything. And yeah, everything was perfect until 23 weeks when my son came super early.
Mm. Mhm.
And yeah, by the time we got to the hospital, I'd been in labor for like 3 days. I didn't even know, because supposedly early signs of labor, you have pains in your lower back,
Mhm. Yeah.
whereas I didn't assume they were contractions. I just thought my back was sore because I was getting a bit bigger.
Mm.
And yeah, then we ended up at the hospital, and 30 minutes later, despite what the hospital were trying to do to prevent him from coming, he was born. And yeah, my beautiful River,
River. Mhm.
yeah, he lived with us for 45 minutes.
Oh, sweet boy. Mhm. I love the pictures that you have of him. I just love the pictures of
Mhm.
love the pictures.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet boy.
Yeah, so my book came into fruition because he he was like, share our story, mommy, share our story. And he wouldn't let up until I did. I'm very spiritually connected. And I've always been a writer. So yes, he was constantly telling me. And it's like, well, I've got to do this human grief thing. Like, give me time. And yeah, it took many years, many more years than, probably could have. But yeah, we've got to do our human grief, don't we?
The human grief. And I have a copy of your book, and we'll talk a little bit more about your book after. I love this. So I'm so deeply sorry for that experience. I really am. And I'm just, again, so honored that you're here with us to share. And I so honor you and the process and your vulnerability. I adore you. And I'm just so grateful that you're here. Yeah.
Thank you. And grief's always with us, I can be teary and emotional, but, also be functioning. And, this was 14 years ago when we lost him. Right. But I guess it's compounded now as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Of course. Of course. So your river, and you navigated grief and loss. And I'm sure that impacted your life in every which way, as it does. And then where did your journey take you after and through that experience?
Yeah, so that was a long journey. It was not just the loss of River, but the loss of being a mum.
Yeah.
We decided to stop after we lost him. We're emotionally and financially exhausted. Yeah. And I think there was a bit of relief there because, it had been such a long, horrible ride to get him. Right. And we didn't want to keep going down that ride on the off chance that we'd get pregnant again. And, you've got doctors saying, oh, next time you might make it to 24 weeks or 26 weeks. And we just didn't want to play that game.
No. That would have been such a difficult decision to make. Such a difficult decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then there was a lot of trying to navigate what life is like without a child.
Of course. Yeah.
And being childless, not by choice, is, a huge loss in itself.
Of course.
So, my life changed a lot. I didn't go back to teaching. I'd actually stepped out of teaching while we were going through IVF. It was hard to just be around little kids all the time. I'm an early childhood teacher, and it was too much.
Of course, understandable.
Yeah. So then I guess that stepped me into a new place, and I started my own private practice, doing more gentle work, spiritual work, doing Reiki sessions and crystal healing sessions and energy work.
Oh, so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, so that was, I guess that's the direction I was going in, and just, really grateful that my beautiful husband was there to support me like every step of the way. And just knowing that, not everyone gets that. So even though I didn't have River, I had Bret.
Of course. Oh, my heart goes out to you. My heart goes out to you. Yeah. And I'm so excited to talk about your book as well. I think that I think it's so beautiful and so real and raw and authentic and just so powerful. So powerful.
Yeah. Well, from what you've probably already gathered and your listeners, I'm pretty honest. So my book's pretty honest and raw. I've had, people read it who have been through IVF themselves, and they're just kind of paused on some of the chapters and working themselves up to read the next chapter because, it's just so real, and it, yeah, really speaks to some of the things they've been through too. Even though it's my own personal journey, there's lots of universal messages in there that women go through when they go down that path of infertility and loss.
And it's so powerful. I love how I love the Deer River. I love when you write to him, and I can feel your connection with him throughout the book as well. I just think that that's so, so lovely. Would you share with us the signs that you receive from him? And do you talk to him? Does he come into your dreams?
Yeah, he's beautiful. He loves the smell of fresh cut grass. So whenever I smell that, I know he's around me. And he loves carrot cake. So every birthday, I have carrot cake for him. I just know that from spirit. Obviously, he wasn't old enough to ever eat carrot cake in this human life this time round. But I believe I've been his mother in past lives. And that's why he lived for 45 minutes, because he wasn't, like, the doctors didn't understand why he could live for 45 minutes, because 23 weeks is before their lungs have developed. So he wasn't able to sort of breathe on his own, and they didn't have a humidity crib or anything. So at the hospital. So it's miraculous that he even really lived in our arms for 45 minutes.
Oh, that little sweetheart. That is a miracle.
Yeah.
That is a miracle.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah.
he loves carrot cake. I love that.
Yeah, and he loves car trips, so he's like like a dog with their head out the window, kind of like he just loves trips in the car. And yeah, now he's up there with his dad, like, yeah, they're together.
Oh, such a sweetheart, such a sweet boy. We'll talk a little bit more about your book now. Are you okay to share about his dad?
Yeah, so yeah, I thought losing River was the hardest thing I never have to do. But yeah, nothing sort of prepared me for losing my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was only 49, and it was so sudden and such a shock. And yeah, it still doesn't make sense. It's been 14 months. And yeah, it's not really a matter of, if I'm going to cry. It's just sort of when at the moment. You never know when those triggers hit. And, I have lots of calm, peaceful moments where I feel guided and supported and things feel magical. But yeah, every day is hard still.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. And you never know what's going to trigger you. And of course, yeah, talking about River today just adds an extra element to it all.
It really does.
Yeah.
From my training, I know that, there are some people that say, there are certain stages to grief. There are 5 or there are 7. And I tell people just maybe use that as a guidepost. And for someone who's lost a child in particular, I tell them just throw that away. And just the heart.
Yeah.
The heart navigates the loss in the way that it needs to, and that the recent loss is going to touch any other loss. And sometimes it can feel like a tsunami. Sometimes it can sort of come out of nowhere. Some days, we feel fine. We think we have a handle on it. And the next day, like you said, it can be a trigger. We don't know what that's going to look like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm glad you touched on that, because as a grief counselor, I get quite frustrated with the 5 stages of grief model, because I think it's so prevalent in our society that people just kind of use that as a tick off, like, you're just going to go through these steps, anger, bargaining, denial. You're just going to go through these steps in a logical order, and then you're just going to reach acceptance and everything's going to be fine. And, I'm 14 months in, so I should have reached acceptance by now, and, I should be fine. But yeah, when Kubler-Ross designed that model, she designed it for people who were dying. Like, she didn't even design it to be used in the way that it is used. So, yes,
Exactly.
although it has, some helpful points in it, and we do go through those stages, they're definitely not linear. And
They're not
yeah,
linear. There was someone
there's
had
no time frame.
There's no time frame. No. And someone had mentioned to me, they said there were 7 stages. There's someone else out now that's writing about and
Mm.
saying the 7 stages. And you're right. People come to me and they say, I think I'm doing this wrong. Like
Yes.
should have gone through all of these stages, but I haven't. And I don't think I'm doing it right. And there's something not
Mm.
right. And I say to them, no, my love, if you're feeling stuck, that's what I always tell people. If you're feeling stuck, then I think we need a little bit more help to hold space for that and take your time. And I said, I said, I would never say to someone, well, you should be over it by now. You should start to feel
Mm.
better by now. You should have accepted by now. It's going to take as long as it needs to. And especially when we've had big losses in our world, that takes time to navigate. And I always tell people I'm a different person from before my losses to now. I'm a completely different person. And it's navigating all of that. And it's just, you're right. Like I can remember touching on certain aspects of grief. Like I hated everyone. I was so angry and so hurt. And we know that under anger is the hurt, and then there's the disappointment. And it was just like, oh, and questioning everything. And so even, when you have the training and the background and the knowledge, you can't just tell that to your heart. The heart feels its way through.
I think that's the problem with any model, isn't it? People think if they don't fit the model that they're doing it wrong, but you can't get grief wrong. We're all unique, and we all do grief differently based on our relationship with the person, our previous experiences, our own mental health, our faith,
Yes.
you know,
There's so many different
heal our
components.
support systems. Yeah,
Yes, it's huge.
definitely.
It's huge. And I find a lot of people that find their way to me, a lot of them don't have the support that they need to
Mm.
navigate that. What do you think that looks like for someone? Like, what sort of support do you think would be imperative for someone to work through grief or catastrophic grief?
Yeah, and that's where support's really tricky because the people who are supporting the grieving don't know what to do,
Yeah,
because we're not taught that, are we? We're not taught how to support someone when they're grieving, and we live in a really grief phobic society. So people jump in initially, I think they jump in with the, can I fix things? What can I do? And as we know, grief can't be fixed. You can't make this better. It's just as shit as it's going to be. Like, you just can't make it any better.
yes.
Nothing's going to cheer you up or help you get over it.
No.
And, the grieving really just need, I guess, in those initial stages, the practical support's really good. And when people jump in and, they bring you meals, or they, come and, help you with, my friends sent people to come and clean my house. Those sort of practical things when you literally can't do those things yourself are so, so important.
Yes.
But then as time goes on, I think, now I'm up to 14 months, you're over that year mark, and that support from, like, I still have some people who really get it and are still understanding of where I'm at, but the majority of that support has disappeared. Like, people are like, oh, well, it's been over a year, she should be fine now, but
Yep.
it doesn't work that way. And, yes, it's different now, but it's still, as you've heard, like when I break into tears at different times, like it's still always with me.
Of course. Of course.
So,
I
yeah, you still have days where you need that support, but the support's not there as prevalent as it was before. And often, the griever doesn't even know what they need. Sometimes I think the best thing you can do for a grieving person is just to sit with them, just to let them know that you're there. The worst thing you can do is say, reach out if you need anything, because the grieving person mostly doesn't know what they need. And
yes,
then their brain is already so exhausted processing the grief that then they've got to navigate in their brain. Okay, so how would I reach out to this person? Would they be available? What kind of support could they offer me? What kind of support do I need? Would they be okay to do that? How would they react? And then your brain's trying to go through all these things, and then you don't reach out to them.
no,
So
and
you need people to reach out to you.
you do, right? You do. And it's interesting. I love that you bring that up, because I always tell people, anyone in my world that has a loss, the first thing I say is, I am sending you all of my love. And what do you need? What can I do? Is there something I can pick up? Can I come and sit with you? Can I drop off a coffee? What can I do for you? And if you can't think of something, then I'm just going to drop off like some cookies or something. And I'm just going to just say hello and continue to check in, because I think you're right. It's almost like again, like you said, there's this grief phobic, like people are so afraid of it, or they don't know what to do with it. And I just find it so fascinating, because I mean, we're all going to eventually transition from this reality. And I do find it so interesting, because it's something that we need to talk about, and something that is real. And the first thing I always tell people when I work with them is, your feelings are all valid, and I'm here to hold space and honor you. And it's not going to look pretty, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to be a fucking shit show some days. And that's okay. And it just is. I tell people I'm 11 years in. Jack would have been 11 this year. And there's still days, like on his anniversary day, I don't talk to anyone. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. I just want to be alone. And I'm just going to probably not wear makeup that day, and that's okay. And just let it be whatever it needs to be. And I think you're right. Like, we don't know. Even after 11 years, I don't know what that day is going to look like. Some years I'm fine. Other years I can't get out of bed. I can't function. So we don't even know. And so, but then to have people there just to check in, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's just knowing that they're there, even if they don't know what to do or we don't know what to do. It's just,
Yes.
hey, I'm here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because, yeah, it really is hard to navigate without support. But, you also need a lot of time on your own as well. And I think, you have to be prepared that your grieving friend's going to cancel events. You might be able to book in with them, but they might not be able to show up. I think that was really helpful for me. Like, friends who got it would be like, okay, so, we can organize to catch up. At this point, I'm free on Wednesday. And I'd be like, well, I'll let you know closer to the day how I'm going, and if I'm able to get there, and if I'm not, even, simple organization things. I remember reaching out to someone. They're like, yeah, let's catch up. We'll go to a coffee place. You pick somewhere, because I'm vegan. So they'd be like, oh, you pick somewhere where you can eat. And I literally went through my phone for ages and ages. I couldn't even logically find anywhere to eat. Like, your brain's just not able to do those logical steps. I think the griever really needs people to take action, like to just say, okay, I'm going to meet you at this place at this time. That's what I needed anyway. Like, and if I can be there that day at that time, I will. Otherwise, yeah, if you're going to ask me to try and organize where I'm going, what time I'm going, how I'm going to get there, it's just too much for my brain.
That is so true. I would, what I typically say is, I'll say to someone, a lot of my friends who've lost loved ones, I'll say, okay. And I usually know what their coffee order is, or what kind of snack they like. And I'll say, okay, what day works for you? Can you come and meet me at the park? We'll go for a picnic. I'll pick up snacks. I'll come and meet. Or I can pick you up. Do you want to let me know how you're doing? I'll come pick you up. We can stay at your house. You can come here. I give them options, not too many options, but I'll give them a few options.
Yeah.
Let's see how you're feeling. And if you feel okay, and then I found sometimes then it would be, the first couple of times, maybe they would say, I can't. And I say, it's okay. We'll do it another time. It's okay. What can I do for you today? I can drop it off on your step. Do you need me to come in? Do you need a hug? What is it that I can do for you? And then the next, usually 2 or 3 times, I would keep offering, and then it would be, okay. And then it would give them something to look forward to. And I would say, we can just go. We don't have to talk. We can just sit and look at the birds and just be in nature and eat cupcakes and cookies, because they're fun, and just and just be. You never know what it is. And you're right. Like I found that a lot of people in my world, they didn't know what to say. So then they didn't say anything at all. And it's like they didn't want to upset me, but then they didn't know what to say. And then it's like, I always tell people that just say something. Say, you know what, how are you feeling? What does that look like for you? It's so fascinating, right? And like you're saying, it's just, there's so many moving parts and moving pieces to it. I wanted to ask you this earlier. Do you have any other books or anything else that you're working on specific to the grieving process and what that looks like?
Yes, I definitely have another book in the making. The story of River and I and Bret took like 11 years, so I don't know when this is going to be happening, but yeah, Spirit have already told me from the beginning that there's another book, and River has said to me, well, you've already shared our story, you have to share your story with Daddy.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. So you've got your book with River, and then you and your book with Bret. And I mean, I find the only word I can use to describe the grieving process is cathartic. You've got moments, little sniggles of joy, or you remember something happy, and then they're all the emotions and the rawness that come from it.
Yeah, it's this beautiful mix, isn't it? Because there's pain there, but it's only love.
Exactly. It really is. It's only
Yeah.
love. I love that. And I wanted to share, we'll talk about this too. You've got
Mm.
a deck of cards that is loss
Yeah.
after loss. These are grief healing cards. Oh my goodness. And I'll have everything in the show notes for everybody so they can find them in order,
Yeah.
because they're so beautiful, because they're from your heart. And I think it's not something that anyone ever wakes up and thinks, hey, this is the experience I'd love to have to make me relatable with people. No, it isn't. And so when we have these
No.
experiences and we navigate it, and I think it's so powerful when you can show up authentically, even in the midst of everything, and to share that with people is so powerful. It really is. And again, I honor you, and I'm just so grateful that you're here and you're sharing your story with us. Now, would you share a little bit more about what the last year, what does that look like for you? What has happened? What does that journey look like for you?
Oh, it's been horrendous. Yeah, just been, I think for me, it's been trying not to put pressure on myself to be or do anything in particular. My psychologist, would keep bringing me back in check, because I would say, oh, I'm not achieving anything, or I'm not doing anything. I wasn't working. I just let my practice go for over a year. I'm only just getting back into it now. And as, just feeling sort of like I didn't have the capacity to help anyone else. And I knew that. And so I knew that, you can't give out of an empty cup. There was no point me trying to give to clients when I needed to just retreat and look after myself and go within. But it was hard work just surviving. It's like a full-time job. And she would say to me, my psychologist, it's not that you're not doing anything, you're surviving.
Yes. Yes. And that in and of itself that's all encompassing, and
Yes.
navigating that. It really is. And now you've mentioned earlier now that you are now back and you're working, and you've got some big things that you're working on, some big changes.
Yeah. So spirit always guide me, and Bret's with me every day. I talk to him, and he's helping me navigate things. And only recently I've realized that I need to move. So there'll be, huge things coming. I've just started getting back into work, and I'm going to be moving house as well. So, and they're big stressful things in a normal life, aren't they? Never alone when you're grieving. It's like, a regular person finds it stressful enough to move house, never alone on their own when they're grieving, because, you know, whatever I'm doing, whether I'm working or grieving, or talking to you or moving house, going to yoga, we're doing all those things while we're grieving. So the grieving takes additional, you know, energy all the time and emotional. Yeah, and it's exhausting. So I think you've got to be really go easy on yourself that you're doing all these normal things while you're grieving.
It's so true. And I love from your love after loss cards. I love what you write here. You say that grief is love. All of us experience grief and loss if we are fortunate enough to love. And you've experienced your own grief and how it works as a grief counselor to assist others. I think it's just, again, it's so beautiful because it's so raw and beautiful and real. And again, I love that you are giving us a snapshot into your world, because not only have you had the loss of River and the experience that you had with him, you've also had the loss of Bret. Yeah. Does Bret give you signs? Do you get signs from Bret?
Yes, yes. Yeah, the cards came out a month after he passed away, ironically. So they're already done and they were in print, and I was just waiting for them to arrive from the printers.
Oh.
And they were meant to be here in April, but they didn't come to July. So yes, they came after I lost Bret, which is interesting. But yeah, the signs from Bret all the time. After he was taken to hospital, he had a heart attack, and after he was taken to hospital, he was in ICU for 10 days, and he came to visit me in a dream. It wasn't just a dream, it was a real like visitation. And he was lying next to me saying, you know, I'm home, baby, I'm home. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm thinking, you're in the hospital. Like, what are you doing? You're not at home. And he's like lying next to me going, no, I'm home. I caught a ride in the ambulance without the sirens this time. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm fine, I'm home. And, you know, in those moments, it was, you know, 3 days after his heart attack, and he was in the ICU, and I wasn't sleeping or computing things, and I just thought, oh my God, this means he's going to wake up out of his coma and he's fine, he's coming home. But then I realized afterwards that that was him telling me that his soul had gone home to God. And so then, yeah, after that, it was kind of just fighting the hospital to let me turn the machines off, because I knew that he was already gone. And yeah, he had come through to me over and over again since that point. Like, that's when he started coming through to me a couple of days afterwards. And yeah, ever since, whenever he's around me, I get unbearably hot. In life, he was a hot-blooded person, and I'd always feel, oh, get off me, honey, you're so hot. And now whenever I am hot, like, I know that he's there with me. I get so many messages all the time, like, oh, there's just been too many butterflies just randomly show up. I was sent on a trip after I lost Bret, like 4 or 5 months later. Him and River told me that I needed to go and take them to Machu Picchu.
Aw.
So, so I went to North and South America for 2 months. I don't even know how I did that. I must have still been in shock, because I still don't even know how I got through those 2 months with my grief brain. But I was on organized trips, so, you know, people would guide me and tell me where to go and where to sleep and those sort of things. So that was good. But yeah, I remember having a really griefy day, and I was standing in front of Evita's memorial in Argentina. And this butterfly just flew up like in front of my face. And yeah, in those moments, you just feel them with you. And it's just like, hey, darling, I know you're here. Like you're having a griefy day and you go and hang out the washing, and there's just like a bird that's just sitting on the clothesline that just won't move. And you're like, that's strange. What are you doing here? And you're like, hey, darling. So
Aw.
yeah, like little things like that. I was in Yosemite National Park and I'm sitting down waiting for a shuttle bus, and I was just really, really worried that I was going to miss it and I wasn't going to get back to my tour group and I'd get lost. And the bus was late, and this little bird just came and sat next to me, and it just sat there for the whole time I was waiting for the bus. It's like it's like, oh, I gotcha, you're fine.
That is so sweet. I love that. That is so sweet.
Yeah.
So
Well, there are so many. Like I smell his aftershave. He always wore dupe, and like I smell his cologne.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I smell lilies. I woke up to just seeing like 100 lilies in front of me. Like, yeah, just so many. It's been so many.
Oh,
He's always with me,
that is
always
so
here.
beautiful. I love that. Do you
And he
find
messes with my lights.
nice? Yes, that's right. I love
And
it.
when I was really emotional and I was going to therapy, and I'd come out of my psychologist session and I was just an absolute mess, and I'd go to turn the car on and he wouldn't let my car start until I'd stopped and done some deep breathing. So
Oh,
there were a couple of times where, yeah, he wouldn't let me drive my car.
oh, that is so sweet. Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Do you find do you find that your spiritual connection, has that shifted any? Has it grown? Has it changed? Has it evolved since his transition?
Yes, yes, so much. Yeah, my spiritual psychic abilities have just gone through the roof. Like I've gone back to doing healing sessions, and
Nice.
now when I do Reiki sessions and things like that, like I'm starting to see like more, yeah, starting to see things and sense things and hear things and know things on much deeper levels than I did before. Like I've always picked up on signs, but yeah, now it just seems to have really tuned in.
I love that. Oh my goodness. I think that is
Mm.
just so beautiful. I think it's so powerful. And I call them sprinkles of love from heaven. That are the signs. And I always love to let people know what their signs are, because it helps us to know that, yes, they're still here. They are still very much a part of our world, and they know what's happening. I love how you mentioned grief brain. I love how you mentioned that. Like, would you elaborate a little bit more on what that looks like for people in case they don't know what that is, and maybe it'll help them to
Yeah.
understand that perhaps is what they've been experiencing?
Yes, it's very real. It's very real, and it happens for a long time. Like, I have other widow people that I know that say that happens, for years afterwards, like because our brain is trying to adjust to something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make sense that you go to bed one night and you wake up and then they're gone.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so your brain has to adjust to that. And you feel like you're almost going crazy because, there are still so many moments after the fact where it doesn't even feel real. Like you still think, oh, maybe it's not real. Like,
Yeah.
and so your brain has to try and process that. And it takes so much effort for your brain to try and process something that doesn't make sense to your logical brain.
True.
That, a healthy 49-year-old could be here one day and gone the next.
Mm-hmm.
That you are spending so much effort doing that you can't do the other things. Like you're just exhausted and you forget things, don't have the energy to do things because, yeah, your brain's just working double time and a half to try and process what has happened and make sense of it. Because our brains are logical, they need to make sense of things,
Yes.
whereas it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
So, yeah, grief brain. is very real.
It is
You
very
can be
real.
looking for your keys and find them in the freezer. Like, yeah.
Right? I remember I put the milk in the freezer and then I put the cat food in the fridge and it was like, what am I doing? What's happening? And it's interesting. I think one of the best things that I heard, I can't remember where I heard it, but someone had described it as your brain is trying to figure something out. So your brain is continuously trying to figure something out, trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense, like you were saying. And it was just like, oh my goodness. And that takes time. Like there's no quick fix for that. There's no snap, write a letter, whatever. And in my experience, that is something that also just needs to, we just have to let our brain work through it. I know that a lot of my clients, I've referred them out and they have EMDR, or they have different therapies that will sort of help the brain to finish that loop, because it's just, and you're right, like it just sits there and it just, the craziest stuff. And I always tell people, I would bet, I could guarantee that you do the same thing in your work. Is I always tell people to have so much grace and compassion for yourself, because healing is not linear. We're dealing with a brain that's trying to figure things out, and then we're dealing with a heart that is trying to mend. And we're sort of trying to reconcile everything that's happened. And it's almost like, I remember thinking, I hate this. No, 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 no. I want to rewind. I want to do over. I don't want to be here. I don't know. And it's like I had this resistance for so long. And I think that also exhausted me because there was a part of me that thought, I kept thinking, well, I do this for work. I should have known. I could have done something different. So then there was the guilt and there was the shame and and all of those things. And so I always tell people it's not linear, and I love that you shared that original work of the 5 stages wasn't meant for how it's being used now, because people don't understand that we've got the grief brain, and then our physical body is hurting. And then our mental health and our emotional health. I mean, there's so many aspects to the grieving process. When you would work with someone through the grief, is there a certain, not a set way that you would work with people, but are there common things that you would look for, common ways that you would help them to navigate grief?
Yeah, and I think it all stems in my holistic world around what you were saying, showing yourself grace and compassion and being kind to yourself. And that's really what I've tried to do for myself first before I can do that with clients. And that has consisted of me trying to advocate for my own grief in our society that gives you a couple of days and then you're expected to be back at work and you're meant to be functioning. And it's been, in some ways, a beautiful journey that I'm really proud of, that I have advocated that no, I'm not okay to go back to work after a couple of weeks or months, or, I'm going to do that in my own time and whatever that looks like, because, we're all different. And, for some people, it does help them to go back to work and get into a routine. But with this whole, grief brain that I'm talking about, and how grief affects every part of your body, it affects your sleep, your diet, your appetite, everything, everything, like literally, and your mental capacity, your, mental health, everything shows up. I've never experienced depression or anxiety, but, I've had anxiety show up. It brings up literally everything. And so it is about giving yourself time and space. And I think advocating, and that's what I do for my clients, advocating in a society that doesn't see that as important. It kind of just wants to, people will feel uncomfortable, I think, seeing us in such discomfort, that they just want us to go back to work, because then it will make them feel better that we're back to normal in some capacity or something like that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
they can be like, oh, well, she's back at work. She must be fine. Now she doesn't have financial problems. She'll be okay. Everything will be okay. But even if you're back at work, it doesn't mean you're okay. I think for those people who rush back into work because they feel like they don't have another choice, in lots of ways, they're just pushing down their grief and just pushing it aside, but it comes back later on tenfold if you don't acknowledge it. And it's all about that acknowledgement. Yeah.
So true.
And, you know, I've gone through phases. Yeah. I've gone through phases where, you know, I think it's almost disloyal to our loved one to, you know, just go back to normal. In fact, there's no normal to go back to, is there? There's a new normal that you navigate and find, you know, as you navigate this journey. But yeah, there's no normal to go back to, as much as society want us to just go back to normal to make them feel comfortable.
It's true, right? And it's one of the decks that I like to use is one of the cards that always comes up is the Between Worlds. So with this one, I always tell people, it's like, you're not the version of you before your loss. You're still changing into and morphing into this whole new version of you. And so I always tell people, we're going to go back and forth. When we get triggered, this part needs a little bit more love. And so we're always navigating and going back and forth. And eventually, and that's different for everyone, eventually we can step into that different energy in that new space. But again, that is so different for everyone. And I think that it's so beautiful and so important to outline that grief isn't just shedding tears and it's a certain timeline and it's, you know, go back to work and take your mind off it. And it hits everyone differently. You know, like I always tell people, my grief was different than everybody else's grief, and that's okay. And it's honoring that. I remember I didn't grieve Jack for the first couple of years. I was in such shock. It was one minute he's there, the next minute he's gone. And it was like, oh my God, what I couldn't even understand what had happened. And then in working with one of my dear friends, it was after connecting with him again and experiencing him again and knowing that he was okay. I remember she said to me, now you must give your loss the dignity that it requires. Give your heart the dignity that it requires to move through this, and we'll let it be whatever you need it to be. So I really grieved for at least a year or two after that. And I would joke with people that I didn't wear mascara for those 2 years because I never knew when I was going to be triggered. I would be walking by a park thinking, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm listening to everybody. I'm getting out of the house. Look at me. I would walk by a park and hear, Jack. A mother was calling her son, and I would be just a fucking mess. And then I'd be like, see, I shouldn't have left the house. And then it was just, oh, and you're right. Like those griefy days. One of my friends, Dominique, she lost her son, and she will go and order a Starbucks and she'll use his name instead. And I remember one day thinking, oh, I want to do that. So they said, then the name, I said, Jack. And so I was kind of excited. And then they gave it to me and I was like, huh. And I got to the car. And when I saw it, it was like, my mind went into instantly, well, he isn't here. Why is his name there? You know, and so again, the mind was like, what are you doing? And it's almost like certain things that I would do that I would think would help would trigger that part in my mind where it would go, no, that's wrong. That's incorrect. And it was just like, oh, it's almost like I felt like sometimes it was navigating like an uphill battle. Like I felt like this, you know, avalanche was coming down and I would just get out of the way just in time. And then some days I would feel like it would just take me and I'd say, fine, take me. I'm not fighting. I'm not resisting. It's just, and it's so different for everyone. You know, and I always tell people, take what resonates, leave the rest. I said, it took a team of people to put me back together. And it's important to have the right support and I always tell people, you know, it's important to be around people or have access to people or resources so that you know you're not alone. As you mentioned earlier, we do spend a lot of time alone because we have to navigate it and we have to sit with it and just try to make sense of something that does not make sense. But it's also important, like you were saying, to have people that you can count on, to have people that just check in on you to see how you're doing.
Yeah, it takes a village. It's not something we heal from in isolation, but I think sometimes we isolate because it takes a lot of energy to be around people who don't get it.
True. Yes, it's so true. And then it's, I find whenever I'm around people and they hear about Jack or they learn about Jack, then it's like the whole energy shifts. It's like, oh, no. it's okay. We just, it's like, okay. And
And
then
that's their stuff. I truly
exactly.
believe that it makes them so uncomfortable because it makes them go into a place where they're like, this could actually happen to me. I could lose my husband or I could lose my child.
Yes.
And they don't want to go there. They don't want to even acknowledge that that's a possibility. Yet none of us are immune from grief. All of us are going to lose someone in
Yes.
our life significant.
Yeah.
And yeah, so in order to stay in their protected little bubble that this couldn't happen to me, or if it happened to me, I would handle it differently and I wouldn't be as messy as Shauna is, or
Yep.
I would be okay. They have to, not sit with you
It's so
because
true, right? Like it's
you
just,
show them what could happen.
it's
Yeah.
true. And it's almost like, it's like they don't want to touch it because if they touch it, then it
Mm,
could come into their world. It's almost like they think it's
yes.
something that could be contagious or, and
Mm,
there are so many families that I've worked with over the years who have said, did I cause this? Did I do something bad? Is this my fault? And so it just, oh my gosh, it can be so heavy and it's so multi-layered. And, a lot of the people that I work with as well, they'll say, I'm starting to feel really good. And then this happened and I got triggered. And it's like, well, that's okay. And we look at it and everyone's different, right? Like some people love to journal. Some people like to work out. Some people just like to sit and be by themselves. Some people want to be around lots of people all the time. Some people have 3 jobs to just keep them focused on something else. And so it's so individual and you're right. Like, I mean, it takes a team, an army and a village to help us to navigate. And I'm just so grateful that you're here and that you've shared your beautiful story with us. And again, I'll have everything in the show notes, but I wanted to show everyone your book again, The Baby Dream, Learning to Live with Infertility and Loss. I absolutely love this. Such a beautiful read. Such a beautiful read. And again, your cards, so beautiful. I love your cards. And now, what would you like to share with everybody? If you could give them insight into the world of grief the way that you see it, what would you love to share with people?
I think we need to get better at it as a society.
Yeah.
I think we need to, it all comes back to love and kindness, doesn't it? And compassion. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how people can just, turn their back on someone because they're uncomfortable when they're grieving.
Exactly. I love that.
It doesn't take much. It's just, just to let them know they're not alone and just to sit there, even if you don't say anything, and just to know that you can't fix it. You can't make it better.
Yep.
You don't need to cheer them up,
Mm-mm.
but just to allow them to feel what they're feeling. Because when you don't do that, it makes people feel like they're doing it wrong and it doesn't value what they're going through, and what they're going through is perfectly normal.
It is. I love that. That is so beautiful. So beautiful. And now if people would love to get in contact with you, and again, we'll have everything else in the show notes. How can people reach out to you? Where can they find you?
So my website is narellehudson.org. And I'm also on socials, so Instagram, narelle.hudson, Facebook. I always forget that one. I think it's counsellor. It's in my book anyway. Narelle Hudson Counsellor
Okay. Perfect.
is my Facebook, and I'm on TikTok as well. Yeah, Narelle
Amazing.
Hudson.
And we'll
Yeah.
have everything. We will add everything to the show notes. I am just, again, I honor you and I thank you for being here with us and sharing your story and sharing your beautiful boys with us. I thank you so much.
Yeah.